In the beginning, I would like to remind all of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should participate in this Lamrim teaching on the stages of the path leading to complete enlightenment that brings together all the essential points of practice.
왜 다선저 담배추지 탐딩하랑서 대인바 그봐라 사동 제목이 애니피게지 디카도 그 대세도와 가정국부터 대랑 관계 시에바다 니세야지도가 돼. 디세야데 배역이 퇴네마 용구에서를 사제돼. 한비에 가자. 갈수다. 가장 먼저 봤대. 제일 대랑 관계 시에바. 안티 안비에디 수게 애니 이렇게 따와 줄지야 근데 제가 숨기 나네. 난 이봤대. 아니 가서 가자 가장 거버데 테랑 관계 제바 니세 다티 디사지 숨긴 안에 디세 다 텔이야 니치네 아니 비게지 테랑게 통 오소만다 진이 수치선 장내 따와줄래 제바오 세야게야 사제파 니체버리스
So we are back to volume number 3 in the English translation of Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment by Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa. And so we are on page 225. It's unnumbered, but it is 225. Just trust me. And where you see the caption, misinterpretations of Savatantika and Prasangika distinction. Yeah? And so right at the top, we laid out some of the important sub-points which Khensur Rinpoche has read from his text. And so he says, this has to do with what we call identifying objects of negation, or in Tibetan called gakcha, what must be negated or refuted, right? And so relating to that, so we have been dealing with a number of sub-points, and now the sub-point that is under discussion is, I read, whether to carry out that refutation with a Savatandika procedure or with a Prasangika procedure. Like when it comes to refuting object of refutation, should we follow Savatandika's way or the Prasangika's way, right? That is the main sub-point. And under which there are sub-points. And the number one is called the meaning of Savatandika and Prasangika, and then refutation of others' positions and so on. So Khensur Rinpoche will, I think, go each sub-point and explain it.
다 사제 니 집에게 당고대에 간에 수기하려서는 대성도가 아니 다 대사비스로 로봉 산제 장진 대버러 다 로봉 산제 장지 아니 만 대바 제 윤디 발라 란주 비에제 되게 말이 텐주 되게 레제네 아니 비게지 텐주를 된대지네 제베 세간이요 말이에요. 로봉 산제 장기 딘디스제네 란주파 되게 말이 텐주 되게 되지 세간이 민두 송기도 안 되나 세간이 매일 세간이 갈사 텐주는 제베 세간이 말데 매일 아시리다 텐주리 제베 세간 민두스 얘네야 아니 피게 디세지 원장성도가 되는 원장 아니 달에 많이 현래면 미래 많이 주매면 뭐복한다 가는 개와 나야 요 많이 시베게 달로봉산지 장게 제바 제 운디 발라 티치시dig만 제바 제 운디 인기라다 제반나 아니 피게지 달에 많이 시야게 또다 따진 등gen기 로라 뉴지 템베 뉴지 죄베 관에 아니 가르쳐 버렸잖아 가서 개와 시가 각반대도 그래 개와 시가 봐 개와 다지 현지 어니까래 개와 주밀이 개와 시가 아니 각반대야 송거다 개와 시가 까다 민족이 이나데나 개와 시 각반대도 송도가 니날 드리 송 개와 시 각반대도 다티 대체도 벌었다 티 시가 각반대비 슉들 땜베 되는데 페지르다 현지 가서 현지 생에대 대가 살다 간주기 서바디 대 로모 링덴지 기타 현지 되되요데 되되베디기 디 시가가가 되는데 텔 로모 링덴지래 가바 대 살다 대 살을 그 가르치는 것이 이게 세가시니 매비네야다 디 티자와 깎아인데 현지 대가 안 되발라 아니 무스가 가다 가반데 샤스니 승구이사래
No. So Khensur Rinpoche explained that great Indian master Buddha Palita, in Tibetan called Sankhya-kyang, who is considered as authority on Prasangika system of thoughts, if you will. It seems that he has not really explicitly made a statement that Savatandika Madhyamika's position is kind of a little off, and Prasangika's is right on the mark. He did not make any explicit statement with regard to such distinctions. However, when we study his commentary on fundamental treatise, which is quoted on the top of page 226, I quote, "There is no sense in which anything has ever been produced either from self, from itself, from something else, from both, or without a cause." So in his work, what we find is that he has refuted these four different types of production, and which includes production from others, if you will. Another great Indian master, Baba Viveka, who is authority on Savatandika Madhyamika school, the other sub-school of Madhyamika, middle way school. He, I think, accepts other production or production from other, if you will, production from something else. That's the translation in your book. However, Buddha Palita, in his works, he has rejected or refuted all those four types of production. Production from self, something producing itself, right, on its own. Production from others, or production from something else, or production from both self and others, and production without a cause. So Buddha Palita has refuted all those four types of production. So based upon that, so we can, understand that he does not accept anything that is produced in and of itself, or intrinsic production or reality, if you will. No.
오다 디네 마줄레 망고 히라 요르 다줄레 다첨보리 줄레 다첨보 히라리 다디 다 용공로부터 제비는 다 디시기서라 디네 마체 용공로부터 제비나 아니 가라서 그지 라리 좀 된데기 아니 비게지 로완남 야 타발라지 타베살렌 고발라 아니 지 현황기 현황기 뭐고 내로 타도 감 동이데 땡라 팝시 아니 팀데지기 토네야 람도 마도 지게데 심베 두야스게요 말이세네 따지 레베 남다 타 예베 권에 동이게 따와드마 다 주봉제디 시동세야시마 어디 강제다 동이 땡 말디 임베네야다 제시는 마 땡라 팝시 투수 중요하라 봤.
So as we got a kind of sense of that, there is what called positional differences, even within Midway school or Madhyamika school, that is Savatandika Madhyamika, following Baba Viveka's way, and Prasangika Madhyamika following Buddha Palita's way. Okay? And it is a big debate. Okay, such is not can be easily resolved, but that being said, where is all these debates coming from? What is it really related to, if you will? And then we go back to our historical teacher Shakyamuni Buddha's, own teaching. What did Buddha say? That for any individuals who are seeking freedom from samsara or cyclical existence, what he or she must have, right? It's not an option 1, 2, 3, 4. It's must. There's no option here, right? So what really Buddha said is that for anybody who is seeking nirvana or liberation from the suffering of samsara cyclical existence, he or she or they must realize and experience emptiness, shunyata in Sanskrit and sunyata in Pali, right? Tongpanyi in Tibetan. That's what Buddha said. Now all these different interpretations, explanation is tied up with, so what is emptiness? Buddha talked about the need to realize ultimate nature of phenomena, ultimate reality. So what is that ultimate reality Buddha called emptiness or shunyata? So this is how different schools of thought have come to sort of interpret and try to understand that. Yeah, so that's how we find positional differences, and we find disagreements and debates and critiquing each other's positions.
다 디제당다 딘데지 베남나 다 예베 거네 디데지 마텐 밥대고 될래 다제 신앙 그 뜻다 망고시 알아 왔다 단능 배접다 등속에 똥이 되된 게 등속에 라소스 따위에 뜻다 똥이 신예체기 비게제 남자 안 되된 게 등속 딱 공발디에 용이야 딱 공발디에네 단나 차샤나 제 로본르들 속에 텐유와 남지마 가이 공발 대용 게 나고 다가난 게 링데는 소비 란주범 지용 가라 란주비게 아니 비게 다와 타동도 봐 땡을 팝는 게 나고 다가난 게 삼삼별로 본 첨부다 제 쇼랑 쇼라 있는다 달리 시와서 있는다 어말 시와서 말 란주로와 시 쇼랑 쇼라라 속비 되니다 존속게 말 동리게 다와디 마 땡을 팝는 게 소소소 란게 대당게 동이마 땡을마 팝용이었다. 팝용도 다야 팝도 지가 말 동이 지가 말와. 지가 말와. 소소소 내루 소소소게 땡을 팝용이 얼마도 저게 타직도 애니 파티 단 텐주였다부터 그 땡을 팝아대 란주바다 심다 뭐 강게게 따와 땡을 팝이게 디 가서 주고 말와티 그 소소소 땡을마 팝으라 소소소소 마땡을 팝용도 발랐더니 반대 비게제 다와탁빙 뭐는 마땡을 팝용도 다 모든 동이게 rem바 전에 오메르도 족전다 뭐송네 오메르도 족전다 송베임바라와 어떻게 송유도 때는 대 낭내장 아니 비게제 르도 족게 낭내장 아니 또 나왔다 또 전에다 심하스네 신럽을 또 이제 자와 시럽들 샤시 자와 시럽들 또 샤시 또 저버리 심한저버리 샤시 동이게 따라 다 동이게 따완 저버리 땡을 파바인 버리스
Generally speaking, many religious traditions, who buy into certain philosophical standpoints, so they will, provide their philosophy with regard to what realities are or should be, right? And that's what we see in both Buddhist schools of thought and non-Buddhist schools of thought. I'm not saying that every religion has a philosophical standpoint on reality, but many do. Okay? Now, within Buddhist schools of thought or schools of tenets, in Tibetan called drupta, tenet, so each school, seems to have a different interpretation of what ultimate reality is. Yeah, and they do not necessarily seem to agree with each other's. And here are some of the examples. In the Buddhist schools of thought, we rank Prasangika Madhyamika as the highest level, top, right? And some of the most prominent Buddhist masters here are the Arya Nagarjuna, right? And the Chandrakirti. And now we have the Buddha Palita, and they're the whole like a lineage of these great Buddhist philosophers and realized scholars. And so they try to explain what emptiness means, right? and which is regarded as the Prasangika's way of understanding ultimate nature of things. Okay. And then in the Madhyamika or the middle way school, we have other great scholars such as Bhava Viveka and Shanta Rakshita, and this all other great masters come said, so wow, the way we understand emptiness is in this particular way. So that kind of a school of thought is called the Savatandika Madhyamika school, right? So, and Prasangikas and Savatandikas do not see eye to eye on the same reality. Yeah, they're both dealing with the same reality, but they have a different understanding and interpretations of what it is or what it should be, what Buddha really meant, emptiness. And then, for example, we look in the Chitta Martin schools of thought and mind-only schools of thought. Then the other great masters come up like, Dignaga and the Dharmakirti and the great logicians come up like, wow, let us tell you what we think the emptiness is. And then that constitutes the mind-only school of, thoughts on what emptiness, ultimate reality is. And all these great masters, they, not that they have explained everything by any more, and this is what it should be, right? They really go through a lot of reasonings, 100 different types of rationalization, rationality, or reasons, try to, establish what ultimate reality or emptiness is. And so many of them have composed amazing treatises or what called shastras, the works, right, on this matter. And in the case of Arya Nagarjuna, we often attribute to him, there is the 6 collected works of Arya Nagarjuna. We call it Uma Riksok Tu, 6 collected works on the middle way by Nagarjuna. All of them are very important. But among them, when it comes to emptiness, establishing what it is, then everybody seems to refer to Mulya Madhyamika or the fundamental wisdom treatise. Sawa Sherab in Tibetan, the fundamental wisdom treatise of Nagarjuna is the authority on what emptiness is, and that's the Prasangika's representation of emptiness.
Oh, that's how I said it. So I'm Simatabuchi Chevri. That he got any condition is going to Kong Human Nanking. And that Nema Tale Mai, Hele Mai, Nile Mai, Jume Mes. I think Mobukanda Kandan, Javanaya, you may send that Tachi, that Tachi, Tali Javak Tachi, Jenny Javak Tachi, Nikali Javak Tachi, Jumeli Javak Tachi, that is so Kagir or make it in my Tinima, so of the Kayan of the Tashika you got it. Tashika you do Balata, Tachili Mijo, they can't do Balatini. Ranching to be Kayong. That Muneg PH Kago, Ranching to Bassi, do some your marriage in Kago, Ali Tashikpa Kane, and it has to sing down the Mazon, and Galoma Gange Mache, and it Tago Tango. That's it, the Ali Tashikpa Kane, and it Ranching P. Carters. Jawa Yubi, Kundu Ranching, take it easy, the Tuchi, the Paka Shabina, and it Ranching, take it easy, the Tuchi, maybe in that the Cartorta, Ranching Miyawati, that took Yorba. The next one on Tachis and Kani, Tikatul Ka. That and the water question at the Matacham Shitari, that on the Teni Telenjumin Kendale, the Kalaji. Nigaleta, my Jumepan, Kalayu, the Nemata. Dami ten public do bala, and the church Dami ten public Hility, what in my tongue, and it Dacham Shuri, what it is Jenny, or Rashid to be to see, Tachiti, Kaviare, start on the door.
So, as I just mentioned, that among the 6 collected works of Arya Nagarjuna on middle way or Madhyamaka, fundamental wisdom treatise or Mulya Madhyamika is considered as kind of the authority on understanding, establishing what emptiness is, shunyata is. And so what is stated in that, those of you who have the book on page 226, right on the top, we have a stanza quoted from fundamental treatise, and which I read already to you. There is no sense in which anything has ever been produced either from itself, from something else, from both, or without a cause. That's what Nagarjuna has stated. And what this means is, in this stanza, we can identify what we call tashi, 4 extreme modes of production. Okay, 4 extremities here, right, in terms of production. Production from self, production from others or something else, production from both self and others, if that is a possibility, as if, and then production without a cause. Okay? And so in these 4 extreme productions, Pasangyaka feel that all the reasons, that, for example, other schools of thought use to assert that there is intrinsic production or intrinsic reality, right? The Tibetan term is called Rangshinji Druba, right? So all of their reasons are included within this. So when you deal with each of these reasons and refute each of the reasons, then the assertion of the other school falls apart, because now there are only 4 ways that I think could be produced, and we look at each of these 4 possible ways, and when you see that each of them is not working out, then that means that, well, you goofed, on this one. So that's what, the basic point is trying to do. And as Khensur Rinpoche also quoted a parallel stanza by Chandrakirti, which is parallel to the Nagarjuna stanza from his memory. And so this is where oftentimes when we deal with the 2 types of selflessness of a person and selflessness of phenomena, selflessness of phenomena really is connected to these 4 extreme ways of production.
가족 싫어야 보지 고쳐 보지 민도 셰다 뒤뒤는 쉬비나 다 진이 달에 많이 있어야 다 현래 많이 된지 삼기 NPG 개와 남이 요 많이 있어야 돼 강경 걸려야 자고 요래 달에 개와 뒤 남이 요 많이 현래 개와야 뒤 남이 유뒤 뒤숨 유 라신 다 간데 찍라 유튜브 라시에 간대적을 뚜비나야 달에 잡아양 맨도 남이야 맨도 대양 남이야 된도 현래 잡아양 남이야 맨도 아니 깔에 잡아양 남이야 맨도 다가나시 주메리 잡아양 남이야 맨도 센다 일본 거봐 독단하고 대파 주빈 사레스.
So an instrumental, if you will, statement is in this English translation, the first line where it says, there is no sense in which, right? So that has to be carried over with each of the extreme productions, which means that there is no sense in which, something could be produced on its own or from itself. There is no sense in which anything, that something is produced from something else, okay? And there is no sense in which something is produced from both self and others. Makes no sense. And there is no sense that something could be produced without a cause. Show it to me. No, he didn't say that, but I'm trying to be a little humorous here. So as Khensur Rinpoche said, of course, Madhyamika is a very vast and very profound area of study. Of course, it would be very pretentious of any of us to say, like, well, we are going to figure this out in 1 session or a couple of sessions. This is where the monasteries spend years and years trying to, rack their brain on this one. But, of course, we are trying our best, given our situation time, try to deal it with synoptically, briefly. And of course, Khensur says, that's because of the time we don't have, and because of my limited knowledge, and because of all these other X factors, So this is all we can do. So the bottom line is, we cannot find anything that is produced on its own at any time, in any location, under any circumstances, period. Okay, zippo, there's nothing we can find. That's how, the statement has, should be, understood. No.
달에 많이 있어야 돼. 디 간대지기 달에 많이 있어야 돼. 달에 껴 많이 있으니 세기도 디 달 제와 마힘밖에 가르쳐 올다. 줍지는 근데 간디스리. 달 제와 능견디 가사 간디스리 있네. 뒤뒤 쉬베이나 달 제와 능견세야 돼. 제당잖아. 시르베 좀 담바와 또게를 방가스 또겨와 가시네서 요래. 뒤에 낭대네 아니 비게지. 뒤이다. 장접받지. 시장 휴생에게 아니 비게지 땡을 받네. 돈도 양치리 mentrawanto bosin ten pap thengi ge thangje pasin teki ta jin du yo re ta ke gi was ta ke ta thande de na sabon ta nyogo ni bu ji sha sha bi na koran ni dani che ji jue du su nyogo yo re jue du su nyogo yo ba yin sa kara karta te kaso jue du su dan de bu di yo de yo re 주투슨 대부 매개지 야대선 야스바지 제 용기지 샤야 요 말이세네 딱랑기 공진로부터 공바시단로부터 주투슨 대부야래 대양 아니 피게지 거리다 어때 대양 아니 피게지 기란족의 뒤뒤 주투슨 대부유나다 디 통구야 말이세요 옹봉 유튜브 메시지를 옹부 유튜브 메시지 인사 아니 옹바 메시지 뉴고 세네 비게지 디날 땐데 요아레스 땐데 요아레스 옹바 메시지 뉴고 신지 요아레스 제세 운두발 때야 옹부 유튜브야 세네 만도 미시기 유튜브야 옹바 세 운두발 와다티 달리 제스키네 어티스기 인신단 두번라보 디디슈나 어때 리스키 요사레
So let's briefly, discuss each of these extreme modes of production, starting with production from self, right? Something we could believe produces itself on its own. Okay, that's production from self, daleke in Tibetan. And so we asked, is there anybody really who said that something could be produced on its own, right? So give some examples. In ancient time, probably still true. In some non-Buddhist schools of thought, my first footnote in some Hindu schools of thought, it has to be, not in the West, necessarily, maybe, we don't know. I don't know. There is a school called, usually translated as Tangjenpa, literally means enumerators. Okay? According to this non-Buddhist school of thought called enumerators, right, Tangjenpa, they said that everything that exists, we call phenomena, can be classified into 25 categories. That's all they said. Everything has to include in 25 categories. Okay? And so that's very much part of their what called philosophical explanation of how the universe exists, in other words. And so in that 25 categories, they also assert that things are produced from themselves. Okay? That means there's a production from self. And then we can ask them, give me an example. How does that work? They said, okay. For example, they would give an example of a seed and sprout, right? Seed, any kind of a seed, and that seed can germinate into sprout, right? Those are two different things. There's a cause and effect relationship, isn't it? Seed is the cause, and sprout is the outcome of the result, okay? They are not one and the same thing. According to them, seed and its sprout are of the same entity. Okay, they're of the same nature. The Tibetan word is rangshin, the nature or entity-ness. Okay, and so what does that mean? They said, well, they're one and the same thing. When at the time of the seed, right, there is a sprout inside the seed. They said, okay, cause and effect exist together, right? Seed and its sprout as cause and effect, they coexist together. My second footnote is, according to other schools, this can be. A result cannot exist at the time of the cause and, all that. But they said, no, it does. That's how you could see the sprout. If a sprout doesn't exist at the time of the seed, then how can you have a sprout? It's impossible, they said. So then we can say, oh, show it to me. No, we can't see it with our naked eyes or any sensory perceptions. He said, it's just there, believe me, okay? At the time of the seed, its sprout is in a dormant form, a kind of a sleeping, and I don't know, you can't see it with your sensory perceptions, but nonetheless, it is there. And how do we know it is there? When you plant a seed and put in water and the soil together, a little later, the seed shows its sprout that's inside it, isn't it? So when the sprout comes out, it becomes very visible. That is called the production, isn't it? So it is as if the sprout has produced itself, on its own, because seed and the sprout are of the same entityness. Are you with me? So that's called self-production. And of course, in many Buddhist schools thought we refute that kind of production. They said that's not possible, A cause must precede the result. A cause and result cannot coexist together because then they cannot cause an effect of each other. Okay? Bonus.
What is it? I did do tune of the that year we should already do of the chair. That is guy you do, and that is your marriage in guy you do. That is Pena Lubon Sanji Jangina Yata, Gagior, to Gagior, that is your marriage. Senang over Chirangi PhD, you do to W say at this hour in the young and your marriage. This is on any PhD. Senang over Namji, that is your mete. That is your Tommy when you do you chur. Tommy do you be chur, Senta, Lubon Sanji Jangi PhD, to the bar, Gayung Yori. They come to myself, and it touches. Guarantee to do and your job on that your married. Kitty and tea, Tommy, you listen, Chicago, Sarava. Did they take that to Chachamburi, Tachita Hamagot? Chian Tachik Globon Churals over the gay. That's you to soon do. Can you see her at any kitty you be in any PhD? Butong Magic language, Jackie Java language, Jenny. Yamba language that Java language in Butong Machi Yovina. And this Sanjang Machi and Rova tea, Sanjang Mati told language Jayaribes. Then you send a Muslim Sanjang Machi, the language Jan to your session attack, Muslim music known to your. Zeta, this is your that Tawad young Karsa. That's what the language. On the Maton Yutoshi, to get from the Chulians in Belchuji Tugway, and PhD, Sanjamachiki, language you say. And the negative Tamagine, Tangjimbasia, PhD, Shirag PhD, Top Chambori, Noble, Time Shira Pupker, in Bainea, Chiran, Kojuk Pajuk Tundule, Judge John, which rain to your dust in the Chebina. That's what the language you send the Gizin, Yungia Maris. I think on the colors of the negative you get to do on the top by you in best. And to see any PhD, color Jordache, Saya, Satubale, Tirangi, and Tokbas in best. At the dear toy, that is one mango stani to Dali Javas, Nitita, Company embrace.
We should always respect different points of view. In as much as we are trying to look at, for example, enumerators' assertion about the self-production, right? We're trying to look at what the reality is. We're not trying to undermine them or be disrespectful to them. As a matter of fact, many of them are very intelligent. Okay, they rack their brain to figure out stuff. They're not like stupid, and then say many things like that. And of course, we cannot do justice here, like to talk about what is their really position, in and out of everything. But just to give a sense of that, I said, according to them, a seed and a sprout are one and the same thing. Okay, they are all the same nature, same entityness. And at the time of the seed, sprout is already existent. Okay, it is hiding somewhere. You can't see it, but believe me, it is there. Otherwise, how can it later sprout? And that's their assertion. So that's called self-production. Producing on its own or producing from itself. Of course, great Buddhist masters like Buddha Palita and then, Dharmakirti, they go berserk with this. They're like, really? No. How could it be that? A cause and effect cannot coexist. A cause and effect of each other cannot coexist. Cause and effect could coexist, okay? My second footnote, I have to be careful with this. A seed and its sprout as cause and effect cannot coexist, okay? That's the... And they said there is no self-production because that is just frivolous thing, useless. If something already exists, what need is therefore to produce itself? That is a completely baloney, it says, you are, making no sense here. That's one reason. And another reason is that if something can produce on its own, then it becomes endless, process, right? A seed produces its sprout, and sprout produces its whatever result, and it becomes just an endless process, and that becomes very absurd. It's a reasoning of absurdity, if you call it. As Khensur Rinpoche very beautifully quoted the relevant passage from his memory from the works of a great master Dharmakirti Chota. And so Dharmakirti has this, many examples are given, many reasons are given to deal with this kind of issues and refutation, right? So one of the examples is, ant, that animal that crawls on your body, Ant, it says, well, let's take an ant as an example, right? Ant may have, let's, pick up an ant who has created karma to be reborn as an elephant 100 times, okay? So this ant is going to be 100 elephants, or let's say assume that. That is very possibility because they would accept that, okay? So would you say that the 100 elephants already exist when the ant exists, because they are of the same nature, because this ant can produce 100 elephants, karma can, right? And if you say yes, well, we can see the ant can stand on the tip of the grass blade, right? So would you say that there are 100 elephants standing on this tip of the grass blade? And if you are, that's really, you're going crazy. Because by any direct valid perception, we can say that a blade of grass cannot support, forget about 100 elephants, even one elephant, So you're becoming very absurd now, and that's one of the examples being, and that's why Khensur Rinpoche quoted the whole passage from his memory, which I wish I could, but my next slide, there. And then another example could be like, let's talk about the food and excrement, isn't it? We eat food. What do they become? They produce excrement, feces, okay? So if the food as a cause and feces as outcome are one and the same thing, when you eat food, you're eating feces now? Or what's happening, So you're eating shits, as we Americans say, So when you are eating lunch, you're eating shits, that's what it is, That gets really absurd. So like that, there's so many analogies are given and used to be able to deal with the issue and refute self-production, okay? Nonsense.
What is that? The but do ya do that? Kaya do that? Then the Kebushari. Sebian that, Tineta, never do the Kasa, Shanges in it. Shanley getting the Karisiri, Shantin, don't get to Sabina, Shanley said it, Rangitini to be a Rangi to Bam, Rangitini to be two Shanchigi, Rangitini to be, and Jebushanchi, take it easy. That is some good. Machita Chico Combo younger, so gay younger, so gay younger matter, can get Kalan Roka, Kay, or my chicken here with Kalan Roka, or my so Gomba gay younger. Says that I could get Lenden deal so big, they ran you and Namge, they rangi tini to be you can't clear, and rangi tini to be Jebush, and do you be in town? That I can't say, that ten you are done it. Namia Jawa may say at Kung later. Rangi tini to be you can't rangi tini to be Jebush, Jawa de Namia, you might say at Kung and do that, Nam Jawa Yamart. Nimba and the Akuranto, they secure it. Shall you take you do that? They say, Yanti, lay hard, meant to take it. Chidar Ben Rodan to your Koran, you already left. I answered, Rari don't be long so what on the Tangi in a killing of the Chaviar. Chiruba, Chiruba, Tunzi parties, don't be a song which and Gomulu, song which is I say, up to see the Maravas. Gamusho, what that? Just as Shendela Rari, don't get longy, and go to mating, Kagwe, Randa, Yula, Senda, listening to Basungi, what didn't I hear him? That all the morning did you lie on? See. Run don't be longy, maybe long to the gear, go show your longy go with the way, she show your about. That pen and dolly carson your sanity, and the med they change, Dolly and Casa. Dole ma ta ti tensa mari ta tenji yo mari ta ranshin jeba yo maris. Kenyin de batam ri ma to ranshin ji jeba ni ji yo maris ro. Garsa tan do tin ma kanshik tenle ji jang te ma ji. Tela jewe ranshin yo ma yin sen dan do kap ti de sin sung jo. Kenyin de batam ji ji ja ji ji toni ende jin ro gro ma do ji la 지 라신 집에 주현지 라신 집은 되고 두고 말이스 간식 깨네 깨장 테마지 달라 깨베 다 라신 요마인 가서 제니티 어디 송제라로 보는 된딜마 tin데 직지 안다지 값이야 비게지 교대 되고 현이도 교대 교대 주면 총번 줄세하게 아니 뭐망고 자기를 받던도 망고 땅네 아니로 보는 된지 비게지 디 가서다
So once again, I just want to reinforce the message that, of course, we cannot easily, dismiss enumerator's viewpoint, with a little bit of discussion and things like that. It is a very vast subject, but given our circumstances, time, that's all we could do. So we're sampling a little bit here and there, So we are samplers. Yeah. Now, another extreme mode of production is called production from something else, or production from others. It's the technical term. Okay? So what is it? What do you mean by production from others or from something else? And who are the people who really say that? Right? Those are the questions we would like to answer. Yet. Production from others or from something else means that something is intrinsically produced from something else that is intrinsically existent. Are you with me? So that there's assumption that there is intrinsically existent cause or causes, and these intrinsically existent causes can produce intrinsically existent results or outcomes. Okay, so that kind of situation we call it production from others or production from something else. Now, who say that? Well, now that we look within our own schools of thought, Sevatandaka Madhyamikam said, hello, we are here, we say that, that's what we claim, And so relatively speaking, in some sense, this kind of level of thinking is a little more profound and deeper. In some sense, it's easier to debate with, your in-group members rather than the outsiders, right? What I mean by that is when Buddhists are debating with non-Buddhist schools of thought, such as enumerators, you cannot quote Buddha and Nagarjuna, right? They'll like, give me a break, who is Nagarjuna? Thank you very much. We will quote you our rishis, so you accept that. No. So you can't quote Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Dharmakirti, Dignaga. You can't do that with enumerators. They're like, give me a break, So you just have to go by reasoning and facts and evidence, reason, and that's all you can do, right? But when you're debating among yourselves within Buddhist school of thought, although you have different positions, then our reasoning involves two things. We can do a scriptural quotation, right? We said, Buddha said, well, they can't say, like, who is Buddha? Like, are you Buddhist now or not? Right? Then we can question them. They're not going to say that. They might say, where did he say that? What did he really say that? Right? That's what they can add. They're not going to like, no, we don't believe Buddha. They can't say that. So in the debate, as we can see, that's what a lot of we quote the spiritual authorities. What Buddha said in sutras, what is said in the authentic shastras, in order to debate with each other. And then ultimately we deal with, I think, reasonings as well, okay? Because scripture can go so far, at a certain point we said, well, Buddha said that and Buddha said that. Well, we both are right. No, we have to figure that one out, right? Okay, so that's the strategy or approach in Buddhist logic. So Khensur Rinpoche tried to recall a passage from Sutra. What did Buddha say about cause and effect relationship, right? And he said, that which has arisen from conditions could not be produced intrinsically or on its own. Okay, for example, there are statements like that Buddha in a sutra, right? That which has been, produced by conditions, the ken is the condition, let's say, such a thing cannot have been produced on its own, or self-production, things like that. And so with that kind of, statement, for example, Buddha Palita or the, Chandrakirti, so then they would debate with Baba Viveka, said, this is what Buddha said, so there cannot be intrinsic reality. There cannot be intrinsically existent causes producing intrinsically existent outcomes. That is not feasible because Buddha, said something else.
어다지 다가와줬다. 란주비디. 나도 현래 자원동이 란주비 텐신업 일이 된대지 가두디 된대지 가버시. 단예가를 잡았으니 때다 또게 땅아 난된지야 지르부부터 지와이 버리. 시자 특히 종고 켈레네 양고랑게 좀 땜비체니 배 이제 난게 지와이 버려봤다. 조고란데 NPG 타바싱이데 켈랭게 어디와다 난베 타바다 근데다 켈랭게 메네 지당 타바싱이데 켈랭게 와리 유지와 이제 안정도 쪼르부터 가르쳐 있습니다. 지 콜을 착백이 착견했던 빵니 지 지부반도 저는 쪼르부터 그 류기권이 끝없이 제니야 타바톱고 버지 노비인사 다텔라 지르부바 아세와 다테 두두데 니까리 주밀이 가서 근디네 다제엔도비 현제엔도비 현다 그런 니까리도지 디디제 레다도 가단지 바리 드마든 가인거와 디지 지보비 가드네만 주밀 저스니 데이터 페이지를 컨디션 제 타샤 다지 페이지 장제 그런 디디지 맨도 장배번도 보지 맨도 주밀 제기라 봤지 주밀이 미제고 가려와라 때마리리 소비도 수수브리 주 가릴 때는 정거리 참아 노보때 노보 갑기텔 노아도 수수브리 주밀 가르다 줄리 마시고 그 정거리 마도 제기 고송게 순도 전 따세 따인 거였다 제비다 아니 콜라다티 겨왕아지 피기 매신 쓰여라 유나 믹스로알레 마믹 피처스 마지 그만도 수 tombrti pane pugutup ji chabayina te phame khoda debi tane lusim kanke thine kable dumni chungbuchi rimato thinyela ani phige chigi chawasin ringbuchi mai bangsi yonggeji kawan doksin o tende ke magen ki tuptala jang pen siga ta tende chigi di chebres
and then another extreme mode of production is production from both self and others. Okay, so who subscribe to that kind of production? You ask. Among the non-Buddhist schools of thought, there's a particular school called Chirpuba, and Chirpuba literally means naked ones. Okay, because the followers, they feel that the sky is your clothes, so you don't need to wear anything. They are called the sky-clad, devotees, so they can be completely naked and very comfortable, because sky is your clothes, right? So again, in their philosophy, they talk about realities such as we call Tsikten-ku, like there's there's 9 key words and concepts. So with those things, they will explain, the universe according to their school of thought. Okay, and so they accept that the things are produced from both self and others. Okay, and so that's their assumption. And they do believe in nirvana, maybe not the Buddhist nirvana, but their nirvana or the moksha, right? And they said, how can you be liberated, moksha, right? They said, well, you really have to go through physical difficulties, isn't it? You should put your body into great exertions and face the difficulties, and if you can withstand that, then you will be moksha or liberated. That's their belief system. Okay, so that's why they don't wear clothes, and they do, they really put their body into test, if you will. So then the reasons, to refute that is the same kind of reason we use for refuting production from self or production from others, because all of those reasons are applicable to this position where they accept that things are produced from both self and others, which is, not feasible. Okay, and then there is what we call production without a cause, right? Something can be produced; it doesn't need any cause. Something can just pop up, without causes. And that's the another extreme mode of production. And then who subscribed to that, if you ask? Well, in the non-Buddhist schools of thought, there is a school in Tibetan called Gyangpenpa. I think it's called Charvakas. Okay? So they really don't believe in life after. This is what it is. What is here is real, and anything else is don't give that to me. We don't believe in that. Anything you cannot see doesn't exist really for them. And so they, challenge you. They said, well, things don't need any causes to be produced. They just exist. Okay. And some of the examples they give is, look at the sharp thorns, isn't it? He said, who made the thorns, every thorn sharp? Tell me, did you see that? Somebody sharpening the thorn? Who did that? It's just that, no cause. It just is that. Or who made every pea round, really neat like that? Nobody did that. That's the way it is, It doesn't need any causes, see? So they challenge you to show the causes for the round peas, the roundness of the peas, and the sharpness of the thorns, and etc. They said, show it. Yeah? And so when you couldn't show it, they said, I told you. So accept my part, And so that's the school who said things could be produced without causes. So those are the 4 extreme modes of production, and we have a little bit sample each school, what it means, and who buy into such viewpoint. Okay?
다티 틴데시안 다텔레 가르치기어서는 다 단지 공도 해버나 신게 아니 비게 일본 산지 장지 비게 다지 현진 이깔 잡아 주밀 잡아 시가 각거리 센터니 휴송아 가르사 시가관대도 디세운데 발라 다티 일본 산지 장지 틴데지가 각바티 단 느낌도 송게서리 일본인 데지기 된 느낌이 되었어 결로 일본인 데지기 랑저 두버당 현조 순진부 관계양 아니 피게지 누범메베 종거네 순송오 세스가 디나 딘데스도 하다 달본인 된다게 아니 피게지 자와시가 각반제버딘 느낌이 되었지 제 랑저 초스 두비히 제 대야스게 매든게 현라 너번 뒷땅불이 이제 전지 캘린더불 디데 효르시 디드레스 매도 다 두들랍기다 딘데스 전에 NPH 지 코로나기 텐주르텔라 현라 봐 까야기 좁지기 텐주르 튼들라 너바카야 민도 현 로몽기 랭덴리기 NPH 로몽 산제 장래야 정주브리스
So on page 226, right after that stanza quoted from Fundamental Treatise, you find a statement that reads, here he negates, he refers to Buddha Palita. Okay? Buddha Palita negates the 4 types of production, the 4 extreme modes of production, production from self, production from others, production from both, production without a cause. He refutes, he said, none of this is working. Great Master Baba Viveka, said, no, see, I don't agree with you, because what you have said is not making sense. So Baba Viveka is challenging Buddha Palita. He said, you know what? Your refutation of production is not making much sense, and neither you establish what is your position clearly, and nor do you really bring any substantive arguments refuting other people's positions. So therefore, Baba Viveka says, give me a break, I don't follow you. Nonsense.
What is it? That is John Joe. That John Joe, the Lani Pata to John Joe Hagiari. Yimpina that tell Teta would John to daughter. Tindegi, Lindi, Juki, John T. Anipigate, Sanja Jan Tata comes to Machon, super reve. Pajoke, John, land up the chair. 대종대 아니 산제장라 여대 매스진 계자 시비나 대요 말이 숨고요서래. 디 매부디 수세했나 게여서는 로본 다와터베 아디 린덴제기 아니 피게지 산제장라 종조바데 종요 말이 신 린덴다기 아니 로본 다와터베 바세했나기 유사레스. So Baba 와야 다티마 휴샤긴다. 세세 농당데 간데선 대선도아 대답을 jonde 산제 장지 로글라 민족배 주젠스다 제부 휴부해주 있어봐.
No.
제부래 안에 제부 있나니 다 시라기 제부 휴부리 거의 가고 이제리 제일 다 지금 뒤뒤로 휴베나 대바나 스타르바.
No.
제부는 대바나 가르스나 로본 다와 잡고 바로 오마베 서바 바로 오마베 우메 따와 줄을 제베 텐주르스 잡거지. 따트나 우메 따와 단지 공도 휴베나 신기 ngaranzo ke khwale ya thebe thap lana mebti ta tongni to be tawa de diga de me de mero an chiri diga ta jebi yinza ta de pige ji thakbu chene pige ji 단지 공도 휴반나 기 tawa ton도 친질로 인den기 ton도 라타 tawa pa meb do go yarwati 아니 텐주르게 관에 파지 ton도게 당이 받던도 매부 속에 인데 임바 다투도 라게다 이미 간시 야데 나빠도 챙기리다 제반난기라 란주기 관에 봐 돈도 따와도 매부 치기리 센데 근데 세운데 다 텐주르 치기리 텐주르 관에 아니 텐주르 신이데 갈세게 텐주르 랑주세야데 랑기 티니 두베줄레 랑기 님피게지 갈서 그랬다 따양당도 그거는 란주시 랑기 팅이 집에 줄레 랑기 팅이 집에 데블러서 같은데 랑주시 한번도 다 고동르기 때 랑주도 텐주빈이디 셰바 한 레베기니 다 전부 다 휴부 요사라봐 얘네 뒤뒤로 bet잖아지 또 텐주를 해야 돼 가르치기에서는 다시인지 단단히 셰브나 신 탈인주를 세 셰파루 보고 로또 된 고발 때또 다시 이제 또 아니 피게지 텐주를 그 거니 까니 따와데 줄 찍고 인자 텐주를 쓰는 생게 요사라봐 양제라테는 다전 텐주를 해야 될 텐데 말아봐 텐주를 해야 돼또 몸불로 저기 따와 시럽 좀마 공부 내긴데 텐주를 그 거니 마다 더버리지 내 맞다 텐주를 거나 만 대비 인자 아니 갈수 있더라 텐주를 쓰기지 탈센주를 쓰겠다 텐주를 거스기 여러 가지게 자달자당 저에 빠져 tunduke tenjur kos jenta 거였다 다 여스다 텐주를 탈세 고겨 걸 치기나디 당아도메 그 텐주 텐이라고 탈세 고겨래 그래 탈세 고는 따빠나도 차샤비는 갈수다 그냥 요것도 쉬지 아니 비게지 라셰지 두와 탈 따걸라 민데베 타와 방거라 요거랑 현기 두와 탈 근데 마임베 제세 따그베 근데 그거보다라 두지 펜베 텐주를 쓰기 어리라 텐주를 쓰니도 어딘데 고고요래 에빠나타 따딱바 타치도 켈랭게 간산으로 되지 여베이다 여러바다 여베이나 될라 자주지 마셔와 타 딱베 쳤으니 고인데 월 탈세 고요 타 디타 되기 따로 줄로 이제는 제 고인도 자주지 메타디 제베 쳤는데 텐주를 말해 텔 가르치기는 따양다스기 따양다 꾸브리마도 텐줄꾸브 말이 세단 텐줄을 쓰니까 또 타직된 별 로또도 봐 똑배치도 텐줄을 쓰니까 그 되네 두제 가리네 다제 신하기 쉬는 아니 비게 담바도 담아도 다디 대보직 차기요 민도 삼삼르비지 그 타진들이 로또도 봐 버네 다 태좀 안에 되어라. 태좀 안에 되도 계전라부지 효체아 해네. 다 가서 누구치지 담바메데 텐데이 베시스 그베티 다콜라 비게지 디 태좀기 타인들이 태좀대 돌네 타 다는 비게지 두자도 비게 지바드 제용거라 봐. 어떤데 세상 다지 텐주르 다데 디난도 따와 줄을 제베 탑 텐주르 잡고지 란주 메도 오다 텐주를 잡고 있어. 어디 제비 인자다 텐주르다 란주를 지다 jangan 탈세야 되지 통당을 되지는 어디 되지 맨로서.
So we are on top of page 236, the second paragraph, the paragraph that follows the stanza quoted from Fundamental Treatise. So Baba Viveka, really tells the Buddha Palita, said, you know what, you haven't really established, your own position clearly, and you haven't really brought any substantive arguments poking, into the weaknesses of others' arguments. So therefore, I don't follow you, okay? And so, in defense of Buddha Palitak, here comes the Chandrakirti. He said, okay, Chandrakirti tells now Baba Viveka, yeah, you are trying to find a fault in the Buddha Palitak's work. Give me a break, I will defend his position, and here I come. That's what the Chandrakirti is saying. Right? So this is how interesting, in the different position. And so a lot of this explanation Khensur Rinpoche has given, I think, is very complex for us because a lot of it has to do with what kind of a logical argument do we use, right? And which is very difficult to translate into English, especially with my English and all that. But so you've heard the explanation about the Tibetan term called Theljur, right? Theljur in Sanskrit called prasangika, right? Theljur literally means, Thel means absurdity, right? If you were to hold certain position, then you would have to subscribe to such absurdities, right? That's called Theljur, okay? So if you look at the syllogistic structure of the Theljur, in the Tibetan debate, where they said the word Thel, absurdity, has to show up in your debate structure to be able to establish the point, okay? And so that kind of argumentative structure is differentiated from what we call Takayangda. It's called infallible reasoning. Okay? Infallible reasoning argument structure and the absurdity argument structure are a little different in some sense. So that's what the whole explanation is about this thing. Okay? So then the question that comes up is, when do we use which one when, and all that. Theljur, I call it absurdity syllogistic argument form. Theljur is used in cases where your worthy opponents, in their mind, they still have a doubt. They're not 100% sure, but they have what we call the doubt tending towards the facts, factual doubt. Are you with me? For example, I don't know whether sound is permanent or impermanent. Maybe it looks like impermanent. Are you with me? It's a little leaning towards the fact. So that is, when your worthy opponents are in that mindset, they said, yeah, I'm not sure whether sound is permanent, impermanent, but I kind of feel like it is impermanent. So this is where you use the absurdity syllogistic argument form called Theljur, okay? And let me see what example Khensur Rinpoche has used here. So in the case, we can say, oftentimes in the Buddhist logic, we use the sprout as an example, right? Nyugu Chochen, sprout, for instance, that's the subject, okay? And Rangshin ki dupathal, does it exist intrinsically? Dupathal, the word absurdity has to show up. I couldn't do it in English, but, in the Tibetan. So, Rangshin ki dupathal, because it is not dependent arising, tendel mayim bichir. Are you with me? If we are debating with Sevatantika Madhyamikas, we can say, sprout, for instance, does it exist intrinsically because it is not dependent arising? Okay? Of course, Sevatantika Madhyamikas is not going to say it's not dependent arising. Are you with me? Okay, so this is how the Theljur works. The absurdity argument structure actually in Tibetan works, not in my English. It's not working. And the same thing with, say, people who debate about impermanence, Sound, for instance, is not a produced phenomenon because it's permanent. Right? Because the opponent is accepting it as a permanent, but the opponent is not, opponent is not sure whether the sound is produced or not, but they are quite sure in their mind that it's a permanent. Okay? So therefore, we are saying that sound, which you say is not a produced phenomenon, not a composite phenomenon, because it's a permanent phenomenon. If something is permanent, it must not be a composite or produced phenomenon. Okay, there has to be logical provision. So that's how the structural absurdity syllogistic argument works, and let me see. So going back to page 226, this whole explanation Khensur Rinpoche is given is on this passage. Let me read that to you. Now the Master Chandrakirti extensively comments on why Buddha Palitak's own system does not suffer from such faults, and in doing so, he states that Madhyamikas should employ reductio ad absurdum prasangika arguments. That means they should use absurdity syllogistic argument structure, not the autonomous argument structure. The Tibetan term is called rangyuba. Autonomous means that you assert that things exist intrinsically in and of themselves. And with that kind of assertion, then you can use what is called autonomous, argument reasoning. So they said that in order to refute the arguments of the opponents, you must be using absurdity syllogistic structure, not the autonomous argument structure. Okay, so that's the whole explanation given there. All right, I know. Now our brain is, where is our brain? Yeah, Lons.
단티마 테스도 티바 휴샤긴다.
Lons.
다텔는 가스케시라면도 란주 테시 각번전에 텐주르 세버런데 더 제라와 전대비 테란이 족들라니 송말다 텐주르 왔으니 때다 란주 왔으니 때긴 적당한테 왔달라 뱀미시기다 망보도 요리 단디네 갈지니 요리 아니피게 현재 룩 가고다 랑게 룩 잡아 오체 사제르부 니체 당골라야 니 아니 현재 룩 가고 이나 현재 kindebat juga yari. Tagate je hen ka se kaya cha yo mara ku ke je ti ma thwa ni ne ane tele pa ka go yor ma to ke je thawa te na mani bache ne ka te ne te ke chal je chwa cha yo mara ba ko. ane debat juga te se ka bo thang bo tenju ranju kharsa ta tenju ranju la jogdu tomachik nang mo sa tenju ba da ranju ba sin ta jeram bu chen te song do ga 텐주바다 란주버스니테 아니피게치 족주 뱀미시 망보리에 송샤 토마제 낭모 원장 대다 탐제 수식기 셰버뉴사 텐데 망보 요바테 아니피게치 수식기 셰버뉴 송거리 봐 셰 누구 말에 송거리 뱀 망보리에다 뱀은 남릉 디다나 셰다 투기어 제르부치 셰그레데 뱀 망보리에 누구여서라 봐 셰당 수식기 셰버뉴 근데 저기 수직이 시합 민노비 인사 대체를 아니 텐주 란주 종담디 아니 비게지 가식 조버를 차오 어다 대샤기 행기 얘기하지 룩 탐제 조이 때는 뱀미시기 다첨부터 비게 망보리 이내야다 룩 nen가 차를 붙이게 가식 조버를 차오 전에 송샤스티 어다 다가샤기
So Chandrakirti tells Baba Viveka, all kinds of, the what called alleged sort of arguments you're labeling against, Buddha Palita, they don't work, and I would like to defend his position and, differentiate the positions between Prasangika school of thought and Savatandika school of thought. So I want to do that. And so in the middle of page 226, as you can see, the approach to do that, this is like how in the monastic debate, they deal with these things. When you are debating with each other, one of the things they do is, first, that there are two things they try to do. Refuting others' positions, right? And then you have to establish what is your position. So those are the two jobs, of a debaters, right? You will find the weakness, limitations in others' position, right, and refute them and challenge them, and then you have to propound your own position. Where do you stand, right? That's the approach. Okay? And so with regard to refuting others' position, first you really have to make sure you understand what others' position is, right, without listening to other, if you blah, 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 it's a blah, blah, So you got to understand what do others believe, really. You have to understand that, decode the message clearly, and then you can challenge them, right? If you don't understand others' position well, then your challenge is not going to be effective. So it says here, the refutation of others' position has two parts. Number one, stating what others believe. State clearly what you think they believe in, then they can verify it. Yes, that's what we believe in. And then refuting those positions. Once they verify it, okay, now I tell you, where you got it wrong. Okay, and so with regard to what others believe, here Rinpoche says that in terms of understanding Teljur, It is translated here as reductio argument. Sounds very elegant here, where I try to use the word absurdity syllogistic argument. For me, that works better somehow. And the autonomous arguments, the rangyu, right, the ta. So there are many ways to explain these things, very complex ways. And you cannot deal with every different positions or schools of thought. So therefore, Rinpoche says, I will only focus on few selective ones. Okay, that will be my approach. And as a matter of fact, in this Lamrim text, we do find, several different positions laid out, and then those are refuted. Okay, not every position that exists. And with that, Khensur Rinpoche would like to stop there today and yield to you. The floor is open. Where is the traveling mic? And yes, could you pass it to him, Anila?
Thank you, Rinpoche. My question concerns the refutation of the enumerator's view, production from self.
Yes.
And the example given concerns the sprout existing at the time of the seed in a dormant or subtle form.
Right.
And so the relevant distinction seems to be between potentiality of the effect existing at the time of the cause versus coabidance of the effect at the time of the cause. So my question is whether Rinpoche can explain a little bit how that relates to the correct understanding of the primordial clear light awareness, or Tathagata Garbha, because in my understanding of how that topic is presented, in some presentations, it seems to be more similar to potentiality at the time of the cause, and at other times it seems to be more similar to coabidance or indestructible claw.
Sure, thank you. Quran condition the dirisha Khensur Rinpoche ta tandang angzo tashi kyawa gaba ya dal kyaba gagu orwa dal kyaba gae de pechen di changjen ba sungbo yin ba
lai
changjen ba ki karise ke sena pena ane saben ge nega su nyugo yore ngabal misebe su de rowa ane situ kala nyugo di Quran nyugura yore sigore nyugo jinje ge nyuba chi yore wa ko yore sigore nyuba de da nyugo de chig zi ne rowa tilago yore wa rowa di chido kalta kyode debu tuji ne ba so shago rowa so the Quran da tiwa shwe de de sa di da cha sa ne ta namjing ang di yore wa Khensur Rinpoche kalso gore sanji rik yore wa sanji rik se do kal sa zamzam de se di ro charo chig do sa ro di session aro na but sanji rik se ge ngzo tamje 가서 카지기 한 대세 제대로 갈 단단한 상계사스 거로 근데 상계 리뷰 시스템 뭐도와 다 가지기 말에 상계 리뷰고 뉴발을 사네 단다 상계요 말 상계론에 뉴발을 식세고 와 제가 다 단다 상계기 리뷰에 단다 상계사래로 와 다 인데 순간 요로 와 라바이나 안 단다 장제멜 라단데 차고도 와 간이세나 사병 내가 수 뉴고 요르슬라로 와 어쩌다 디기 세가치 대세시 나로나사 세송을 그들 문제
달래리리 다 제장 단집에 아니 비게 사봉 지수 요거 요세야디 요거 같은 누바든데 샤고 요사 말이 아 자체부터 미신데 이래 요거랑 샤고 요사래 요거 요래 요거 거랑 요래 디 가르잖아 뭔가 미세백 주인 요거 요래 나도 공부 유도 마추르베기 아니 비게 요거도 요래 마도 요거 요래 마 요거 요래 센다 베지 누바테 베지리 샤고 요사 말이 요거랑 요세기 요사래 따서 될 란제자 뭔데 마동 요도시 타게단지 축리 센스 바 까당 따버인 요거랑 요 대관바세요 말이 아주 미세 유도 줄여 말이 마도 제가 땡땡기 요거 요래 센 티세라와 난 남바 산체베 나도 줄 레기요아레스 레기요 나도 줄 아니 피게 산체게 레기요 마도 산제 유시요 말와 나도 줄 산제 레기요 마도 줄 나도 줄 가르상고 봐 메시지 주기 산제 유 세네 디시요 말와 레기요 레기 땡땡요 레기다 가지고 가봐 주네 벤나부까부 나힌게 망야서 제제기 대치 제베네 콜라 피게 सबतत मासों से यांगी सुजीगे या सांजे के रेट चने दी करते उड़ता के ठीक थी युद्ध कुरान के छाजें दे थे सांग दिया रे शेतांता ने युद्ध गाजो सांजे यस गाजो सांजे गाजो तंत सांजे युद्ध संगा पने खासा छदा बचके तो गा जुल सांजे यस है ना जुल सांजे युद्ध ने जुल रेगी बिचस ते 용교 말다 regular ongi sanje yusene ne jul sanje yusene tuya mebre sanje ji kun yurungi pigeji nubatsane midu tindegiti ti yoaris mebo mari mato sanje yusene sigi mari sagachi
당에 코로나 단데 디데 가서 뭐스터 라그면 게 디스 딘데 로아메를 성게 대변한 안조 가르쇼고를 추주 하나로 봐 문제
네
안조 추주 하나 디 연구로 와다 가서 그래베 그 직밥에 가서 상리견 상계사레스네 그 단다 안조 디 상계주 제어를 단다 팁제 값셔 팁버세데 상계제 버려 디시스 얘기도 와 디데 파운드 메더 성도
딘데 유스티기를 봐 안조 상계 그 유스야티 베니 요리 안조 질 요리 땡 안조 비게 마동도 마도 나도 줄 산제 열선 딘데 딘데 해 장게 딘데 유지를 와. 양 나도 선에 면도다. 딘데 제 시기 말이스.
Okay, Khensur Rinpoche said with regard to enumerators, that example of how seed and sprout coexist. Okay. And it's really to the extent he understood it, and he quoted that whole stanza, it does not refer to the potentiality of a sprout, but they do talk about invisible sprout and visible sprout. So they said at the time of the seed, there is invisible sprout already in that. It's invisible, that's why you don't see it. But once it comes out, then it becomes visible. That's only difference, you know. So in the case of the primordial clear light or the Tathagata Garbha or the Buddha seed, the different terms we use, maybe there are, some, who explain that we are already Buddha because we have that seed, something like that, But Khensur says, his position, system of the thought is that we do have the seed of a Buddha, but the seed of the Buddha does not equal to being a Buddha, okay? So that seed is really, we can think in terms of a potentiality, right? We have the potentiality to become Buddha, but we are not Buddha yet, okay? So from his point of view, nobody can claim that I'm a Buddha because I have a Buddha seed inside you. Yeah, Buddha seed inside you, that I agree, but that's not a Buddha yet, And so that is his position. So we cannot claim that there's an invisible Buddha already inside, right? Just like the enumerator said, there's invisible sprout in the seed. So no, we can't say that, well, there's invisible Buddha inside me. Then it becomes Buddha, visible later on now. So that's his position. But he said there may be others who might explain it differently, Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is about the distinction between the Svatantra argument and reductio ad absurdum, the prasanga argument. So an example is given of a prasangika or a reductio ad absurdum prasanga argument. The example was the sound is impermanent because it's a produced phenomenon. Sound is impermanent because it's a produced phenomenon.
Yeah, that would be what we call the ta yang da. That would be the infallible reasoning, not the absurdity argument.
Okay.
It's very hard in English.
It was stated to be an infallible. Okay, so it's the other way around.
That's right. It's the other way.
Okay, so
that's the infallible argument reasoning.
Yeah. It's not a prasangika argument.
No.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, is this an example of this stanza from the fundamental treatise? Is this an example of a prasanga?
Which one?
There is no sense in which anything has.
Oh, yes. That's from Nagarjuna's. Yes.
This is an example of a prasanga argument.
Yes, those are I think, 4 extreme modes of production, except in different schools of thought, and prasangikas are refuting each of them, right?
No, but the whole stanza, is it an example of prasanga argument?
Oh, I see, prasanga argument.
Yeah,
okay.
Because
right. Okay.
Obviously, this is what he takes issue. The Bhava Viveka takes issue with that this prasanga argument does not establish his own position nor refutes other people's position.
Ala Quran this go that and Sawa Sherab gi yigiti wa tala maji shelme sachu or wa sikje. Sikje tagana ane tenju chada ro basa. This sikje tagana tenju ke chaga maro.
chaga mar.
Tenju kasada.
Kogro wa tenju sin de kogro.
This sikje dinala ko tenju yo ma tenju ko go wa.
Really. Tenju ta ti sikje ti tenju ko bis ke mari. Ta Quran gi sawi ngo sung sare ma tum hindu lambre ma to. Ta tenju ko yo maro.
Just ko this song that the mandros ta tanda lengden che gi sangye jang la ro wa Janagi Tenju Kyo Mindu Sajarwa, Gil Shaman did Tenju Kyoman and Tenju Sayamarwa.
Tenju Ku, Zawati, and Sholokati that Tenju that Tonto pretend you know Mato Chelamos Kuyo Mari.
Yeah, that stanza he said, you know, it does not explicitly use prasanga or the absurdity argument. It does not. Yeah. Yeah, it does not. The fundamental treatise stanza, right, you just read to us, it does not state the prasanga or the teljur, absurdity, syllogistic argument. It does not. Yeah.
Well, but my understanding is that in the absurdity argument, the syllogistic reasoning, there should be no syllogistic reasoning. There's no conclusion. It's just making some statements. It seems to me that it fulfills the.
Yeah. He said technically in.
He's not stating his own position.
That's right.
His own position being that conventionally nor ultimate reproduction does not exist. That would be his own position. He's not stating it.
All right. So you mean he referred to Nagarjuna, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's from Nagarjuna. Yeah. Dire tatanda di Zawa Sherabgi tatanda di Talamaji Shelamaji Sajorwa. Digi ta Shingi Kaso Tanganzo in the Kawa Gosa Mother Rangi Sosogi da Luciorwa. Diki Jugo Marwa Satanda de Capella. Ranguki Shagio Marwa. Shinlu Gasha Mother.
Shinlu the Kagdo, Talamais. In a tati,
Shula
Rangu Yuchograva, Talama Imbeti, you
Shudin la Coach or
that's all about the 10 you can get of it. Don't you get it? Lubon Kazatiraba, Carson. Sanjay Tangi, NP, Tanjambal, Tenjur Kune. The Lodo say young girl, but him at the Chilla, Zawatigi, Tenjur, Pezir, go is a married.
Then the one the Tenju says your work in the room. Tenju said the coordinated, but Zingin and the Telgres Law Mother touching to Carso, that doing a Shago Marawasa. Tenju could do color, but the tie and that way touches me that the Chevish Labrova. Tenju could do color and the negative touch was in Yusuke like a cure of Jung or was
he don't you younger. Takoran, Kelantilla, some don't go to Chagi or Penetrat, Takbar, he is Jenny, and not to Sushen, they call Yang Mari, Takba Yin, and Korak, any PH, Chebayina, Metabi, Tabai, did Koranki, knitting it, Yorwa. Tell a tratu, Masha, any Karsatini. Dakpa, Sekobi, do a lot. That the Cheva Maribe, any Dakpa in base is good because some much cocoa. Yeah, that the Tachu Masha, the Dakpa says on it. This ever in that the Tachu Masheva in Pando, say at it, the Gio Marco Shevachi in Badi, Kelan Kuyorva. Teach the Balata Koranki, Tanjiki, Tatakpa in Siaki. Touching the Lodoti, Toboji Chini, pages that contain some Rabuchigi to Tidum Golonete at Tintigi. That is so it toned you and 10 euros in the Koguaris.
So in that stanza from Nagarjuna's place, you know, yes, you're right. He has not stated his position explicitly. He's simply laying out their arguments, refuting it. But implicitly, we could say, you know, maybe his position is implicitly understood, right? When you refute self-production, then implicitly, what is your standpoint on that? But explicitly, he has not stated his position. Another thing about, as you mentioned, because I was trying to explain to translate back to Khensur to make sure that prasanga, or the teljur in Tibetan, I call it absurdity reason. That's you're right. There is no conclusion. It simply says, if you were to hold that position, then this kind of absurdity would come here. So would you be comfortable with that? That's true. That's teljur. Whereas in the infallible reasoning, taryanda, then it's very definite. You know, if you do this, then you know. So it's the big difference. Yeah.
About this same stanza, it says there is no sense. This no sense. Does it refer to? There are two possible senses. My understanding is the conventional sense or ultimate sense.
Right.
So is this what it's referring to?
Okay.
The word no sense.
Right.
So there is no neither conventionally nor nor ultimately production exists intrinsically. Although intrinsic is not stated, but he's saying it.
La
Zawasheragu Lung the Yang Josima Sona, the Talamaji said.
Ali, Tale my Shele Mesarva, neither my Jume men, sit Sirava. That he to Gina would tell her 야니를 많이 지면은 아니 제와남이야 요 많이 뭐부 간다가 신앙 뭐부 간다나 달에 제와도 신의 제와니까 주민 제와 뒤 남이야 요 많이 센다디 송거야래
신앙 뭐부 가인에 아니 가서
달에 제와다 신의 제와 니가 제와 주민 제와 뒤 남이야
다 매세 그 고든디
라
매세 고든저로
그래지
디 타니에도 매버 고든스고래 전담도 매스고래 타니에도 전담이가 매스고래 디 고아도 간다스는 거라서
그래다 타니 돼야 매스는 되게 근데 왜 찌찌찌찌 이제 타니 돼야 매스 세번 했다 같이 기타 매네 매주다 아니 지내는 찌찌찌찌 싸니니 요 말이 김매비는 다 매주고 센세를 되게 말이 지된 작배 군도 말아 직전에 양 직전에 작배 가도 자자디 텐이 하고 여러마도 대매 세잖아 아니 한 계산을 쉽지않고 그러다
because I asked Khensur Rinpoche to quote exactly what is in because I want to hear it in Tibetan. I don't have the Tibetan text here, right? According to his code, it's slight difference, but for example, it doesn't come says there is no sense in which it doesn't. It's just like there are no external or internal phenomena which have been produced from self, whatever things like that. So it's a little different version. But then I checked in case this is a sense, should we take it as a conventional sense or conventional ultimate sense or whatever it is? He said, no, this is conventionally speaking. Conventionally speaking, there is no production from itself. Conventionally, there is no production from others. Conventionally, there is no production from both and without a cause. So it's conventional sense, in a conventional sense, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Can you pass it to that mic? Yeah. Yes. Is it on? Yeah.
Hopefully this will be quick. Looking at this Savatrantika and Prasangika distinction, I wanted to know why Lama Tsongkhapa thought it was important for us to know this distinction. And I'm pretty sure he didn't want us to be expert philosophical debaters.
Right.
Or is this like another tool to help us understand Shinata better?
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Quran can show the Diresha, that under the Jerembu Cheki is Rwa.
No.
And thank you the Rangyu Begi, that Tawa Yawa the Yakushi Yasam Chokores, that is Sungu Rwa. Thank you the Rangyu Tawa Yasam Day. So then this Sungwagi, Koba Kumzendi, and a Karasogore, one of the Karinas Rwa. Jerembu Cheki and a bang on the Chopacha, the Sungu Yimaras Rwa. Thank you back audition and the Rangyu audition, Pass of Chopacha, or the Shea Yimaras Rwa. There's a Tony. The toya chedrowa chedro anything you the rangyu be the yawa yesam yagu shegwa ge gyumzen dire besa
da diri yesange kondi hubna kin jong de ma song chen sanje ji mi song sha ge tekona ni ge ten la pabin de ani ta lomo rang lomo so de tu to ma ji yo ba ba ta 타독 ten la pabin de ta tenju e ta wa de 타독 ten la pab de go yo ma to che ge rangyu be ge 비게 람투도 대비 코란 야고 레디 이내야 비게 कुछ साधारण रूप से भी आगे थी कि जैसे भी हमारे था घर से को घर से ना 신앙 공부 보나 아니 비게 랑 튕이 좀 된디 알아 니제 dio 벌나 다디 텐주 어떤 시락 비게 담버 좀 한다면 팀부터 체면게 시락게 갖고 차도 비 유비 인상 따와 터득된 법고 인상 아니 비게 제 다디 담미게 따와도 인데야 소니 야야야야 따와도 오마 고마 양자야 템버터 붙이 제니 말좀 된데 송기도가 대인사래 공사집에 연락스 그래 대세도 가서 onsom지 땅나다 집아 신이지 참아니야 땅나 신이지다 아니 비게지 참아신지 니야 돼 땅나한테 참아티 고사집에 연락 인식이 왔대 땅나한테 땅나님들이 하고서는 다들 저쪽 참아티 참만남다 직다 직 임바 직다 되네 하고 특이 알아와 제단양 수수수수야 고사집이다 좀 나도게 흉게 나라 고사집에 연락신 근데 송구 알아
That's right. Khensur Rinpoche said that the Rinpoche is the intention, for making all these efforts to provide us the distinction between Prasangika and Savatandika. Is you're right. It's not so much like that we know this each other. Then we're going to start a debate, among these two. But the whole idea, as I quoted it somewhere in the beginning, what did Buddha say actually in the sutra, right? Buddha said that for any individual who is seeking freedom from samsara must realize emptiness, shunyata, right? So now these different schools of thought come up. What is shunyata, isn't it? Exactly. And then every school thinks that they got it right. For example, Savatandika Madhyamikas think that they got it right, what emptiness is, what Buddha exactly said, you know. But then Pasangikas look at that like, no, you didn't get it exactly right. You kind of got it, but you really didn't get it. Okay? And from Pasangika's point of view, which Rinpoche also follows, that if we follow the Savatandika Madhyamika's philosophy, then we have to assert that things do exist intrinsically, isn't it? So that means we believe in the intrinsic existence of reality, which from Pasangika point of view, then you are stuck in samsara because you already believe in that, you know. So you are reinforcing your own belief. So you need to let go of that part. So therefore, Pasangika's interpretation of emptiness is a must to understand, to let go that belief in intrinsic reality. So therefore, we need to understand. So that's why oftentimes the great masters who teach these things say that these different schools of thought within Buddhism are like the rungs in a ladder, right? You understand this will facilitate you understand the other part better, right? Every school claims themselves to got it right, but when you look from the higher point of view, something is missing in the lower one, right? From lower point of view, they got a little bit better than the other one, right? So you have to look at them as the rungs in the ladder so that we can climb up to the destination. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, where is that? Yes.
I want to double check again. A couple months ago, Rinpoche said the ultimate truth deal with the subconscious level through meditation, but what we are dealing with today, like the consciousness level, right? So the ultimate truth, you can only get it through meditation, right?
Okay.
A couple months ago.
Well, I'll check with him. That's what you're saying, right? I'm a preacher. I'm not going to confirm or disconfirm that. Okay. Korangi condition de dirisha. The Korangi was Morangi. Kapugate de Kansas City. 띵에 대바절이야 뭐나 독립시도 캔서로 문제 딘데 성관을 붙여서 당아도 전담 템바다 군서 템바 남사시거로와
라리
전담 템바 생엔디 아니 원에 단에 지 다가스 당부 옹부주의로 붙이는 고쳐야 되는데 말해서로와 코콤 냠len신 엔또 과이스레서로와 지도 고 처벌을 찾아요로와 다 군서 템바 생엔디 당당한도 시에대야다 고대야 돼 이거 찾아거로와 어디네 송소 디 다가라 뭐 딱다 고대요래 뭐래 고노 탭을해서
제 통담 템바 생이디 다가라리 람상간도 즉 수다티로 장간도 롱주야 나시 디리게 람상지 또 저저저 말봐 내 인상 다티 통담 템바 생이디 또 벌 단지 공도 휴와 나시게 이제 육등본데 막 까와째니 켄주로 따양다 다가나 신게 대응어디 알로 아니 비게디 투종의 삼종의 검중례양 온전히 아니 비게디 무슨도 또 되게 검중기라 온전히 아니 되게 유지차되어리스.
So Khensur just said that yes, ultimate reality, in order to really internalize it, process it, we have to do that through meditational process. We cannot easily access it just like we could access many of the conventional realities, right? Our sensory perceptions can deal with visible form, sound, taste, all that, right? It's not that difficult, like it's all here. But emptiness is so profound, ultimate phenomena, that you cannot see it, touch it, taste it like that. So, but in the beginning, we have to study it. So through listening to teaching, we form the correct understanding of it. And then we have to contemplate the meaning of it, right? That's the contemplation. So as the contemplation deepens, then through meditation process, we are really going to nail it down, right? Then we experience it as it is. So in that sense, ultimate reality is much more inaccessible, right? In that sense, the conventional reality is much easier to deal with. And so that's all these discussions today we have about, prasanga, or this absurdity, syllogistic argument, all the autonomous, all this. These are supposed to be intellectual tools to be able to form the correct understanding of emptiness, So these are all just different methods to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
DJ 가서 삼바탄다 군접시야 라바죠와 군접제리 나도 라바트도 이제 받도야 되면도 야 군접 참모 또 없으니 되라 갈리 가고리 군접 참모 생인데 또 발라 통담도 방또 봐 공원도 붙고 가리 지당 안도 군접 단다 또 세야지 군접 참모자 또 되어 말 다가지기 비게지 다 탄익 사진을 보지 될 군접 레베스네 레세야 맞도 지가 군접 참모 남샤디 비게 또 되어 말이스.
But I must clarify that when I say that conventional truth or reality is relatively easy to access than the ultimate reality, we're talking about the everyday conventional reality, which is called the gross level conventionality. But the subtle conventionality is much harder to process. Actually, it's said that before we can really realize that, we have to realize emptiness first. So there is subtlety to conventional realities. So I don't want to misrepresent that one. Okay, I have some prayer requests. This is Sende Kulo Tutu Renga Reserva. Ming ya this is the teen doing Sarava. Thomas de Tume Jamjanaronas. Tene Nebaji Tanda Mengan ya Sani Sakjo Cheguduma. Mibekensa. The Vietnam la resha long of Jungapside the one. Mingla ya Ton New Huin Lin Salarwa. Okay, two prayer requests. One is for someone in Vietnam. Her name is Ton New Huin Lin. I hope I'm saying it right. Who will go through throat cancer surgery tomorrow. So please send all our positive thoughts and prayers for her and others in the same situation. And then we also requested prayer for someone who passed away at 65, and her Dharma name is Tin Duin. Okay, it's a lady. So anybody else who have passed away, please say our prayers. Omane beme ore gyawa de yenyo do da chere se wang ro june do wa che jang ma lu de sa lang go ba ra sho to je gong la nyen be chom den de sen zang de de nyen zhuo dong ye sa de zong ne se san jie men jie la bin lu ya ye yo la cha ze lo ong be sha je be sha ya dam be ge dam be ge ma de sam mo ga de sam be sha be ma ya na me ga na me be sha be sha ma be sha be sam mo ga de sam mo ga de be sha ma be sha sam mo I do so what they are. Razo Kong La Boje Taze Yang La Zhu Ju Yang Den Sun Zhu Da Che Zhou Nian Mo Nian Long Le Ye Jiao Zhou Zhen Ze Jie Ma Zhe Me Se Dong Ye Niu Guo Xin Ye Quan Ze Re Zhe Le Ne Da Jie Sa Ju Da Sun Yuan De Ren Zuo Jie Se Tu Yu Guo Zhu Zhao Zhu Da Da Jun Ye Jian Zhe Da Lu Mo Zhen Jiang Bei Yang La Du O Ma Ra Mo Zhen Na Di 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 Omara Bazana Zenden Jie Jiara was a Dalo Demo Mumba Rasene Tada Tenju Shunlo Tokba Lojo Bode Nawa Zendo So Demba Nyame Lojo Tome Tendo Chudin Shan Divan Kara Yamje Sombo Dende Gele Zove Pendo So Chanjo Nipo Shebe Shobo Namda Chudin Sonye Le Dande Namda Choye Nyamdo Chebe Pande Allah me shala sawa de chudu chebe kera le. Nyamda dogo dobe semje je sawa ri nye nenjo la chebe loza kyande bebe. Yingma nga ye rangda che de be yebe me se do wa de wa la ye de be se kuzo shen. Yambe sadam be do nyanje. Manjushri prayer. He who has the intuitive wisdom that disperses the clouds of true obscuration, like the sun shedding a glorious light that is eternally pure. He who understands all meanings whatsoever of perfect realization, from whose heart emerges the lotus holding the books of the perfection of wisdom. Those who live in samsara are the prisoners of ignorance, afflicted by the darkness of suffering, looking after all sentient beings with compassion, like a mother looking after an only child. You have a melodious voice of 60 tones. Roaring like a dragon, you wake people from the sleep of conflicting emotion, freeing one from the iron shackles of karma, dispelling the darkness of their ignorance. Thus you wield the sword which cuts down the shoots of suffering. Primordially pure, having reached the 10th bodhisattva level, the perfect body of highest qualities, the foremost son of the Buddhas, adorned with 112 ornaments, major and physical perfections of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri. Please dispel the darkness of my mind. Om Arabhaja Nath Di, I beseech you with the loving kindness of your omniscient light rays to completely dispel the dark ignorance of my mind, thus giving me the intellectual courage and intelligence to understand the teachings of the Buddha. Treatises and commentaries. O peerless savior and supreme teacher Shuddhodana's son, all the 17 masters and adepts, Nagarjuna and Asanga and so on, O Dipamkar as well as Sovereign Father Tsongkhapa, gloriously appear here today to grant auspiciousness. On the great path leading to the heart of enlightenment, you have traversed by means of the perfect threefold discipline and have enhanced ever higher the realizations of the enlightened qualities. O glorious Guru, we offer our supplications at your feet. Pray written gloriously to propagate the teaching of Lobsang by tying well the sash of monastic disciplinary precepts and generating the altruistic intention to free all beings. Engage in the Tantric yogas of the 2 stages. Think of the unbearable pain of the sentient beings who are enveloped in the forces of 5 degenerations, and to open wide the lotus grove of the Buddha's teachings. May your reincarnation appear soon as a source of merit for us. Namo. Jeba nyamba meba yang
Kone kondo
pewa yon donye dawa Rinpoche manje bana jejo jeba nyamba meba yang kone kondo pewa yon sa je 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 mendo zhang re ra lin je nye de jemban de sang je yin do me de wi wa ye zhe ge nan da jian la je ba yin zhong kan re ra le go le xian gang de ten da de wa ma le zhong ye ne jian re ze wang Tenzin jia zuo ye xia wei si de pa do den ju ro jie ye da ma an ge ro ran ma men de la ga ni ya da ya mi